we're following a development related to one of the FBI's key witnesses. That is, this person's testimony features in the conspiracy to commit a computer crime offense against Julian Assange. And the name of this individual is Ziggy Tardarson. Ziggy is a convicted pedophile and FBI informant. He was apparently granted an immunity agreement, immunity from criminal prosecution for his testimony. At least that's what reporting has suggested. But he's continued his crime spree, leading the Icelandic police to have him jailed. Two Icelandic reporters, Gunnar Hrafn Johnson and Bjartmar Alexandersson, who interviewed Tardarson for 9 hours earlier this year, broke this news that he is now in Iceland's highest security prison, Litla Raun, where he was jailed on September 24th. Tardarson was brought before a judge after he returned from a trip to Spain. The police requested, quote, indefinite detention intended to halt an ongoing crime spree. The judge apparently agreed that Tardarson, his repeated, blatant, and ongoing offenses against the law put him at high risk for continued re-offending. According to this news organization's sources, the main reason why he was put in jail is the large and growing number of cases of financial fraud levied against him recently, including an allegation that he falsified his own lawyer's signature in order to fraudulently inflate the net worth of his company's assets. And so previously this year, in this interview for Stundin with Alexandersson, he told the media organization that, quote, the idea behind all the companies that I run in Iceland is to squeeze out every last penny, knowing it will inevitably lead to bankruptcy by request of the tax authorities, and the bill would end with them. Is it illegal? No, it's just very immoral. That much I would agree with. But I have not heard of anyone being convicted for this sort of thing, which, as Stundin went on to note, is patently false because people in Iceland have gone to prison for engaging in such fraudulent schemes. Besides Consortium News, there are no other outlets that immediately did coverage of this development, despite its potential implications. What we find in the article from Stundin is a recap of who Ziggy Tardarson is as an individual. And so it's worth reminding everyone that Tardarson is a repeat offender described as a quote unquote sociopath by court-ordered psychologists during a trial, which saw him jailed for sex crimes against 9 underage boys who he deceived and coerced into giving him sexual favors, deceived into engaging in prostitution, essentially. 5 other similar cases were dropped due to lack of evidence. One of the victims committed suicide after prosecutors dropped charges specifically related to his abuse.
Þú lofaði honum gullöggarinn, sko, mannst ekkert eftir þessu. Lofaði honum að koma á setja hann bara launaskrá fyrir 1 milljón á mánuði. Einu sem hann þyrfti að gera sofa hjá þér. Og ef hann vildi ekki lengur sofa hjá þér, þá getur hann samt haldið peningunum. Þegar það væri búið að skrifa upp á samning. Mannst eftir þessu. Já. Ég meina, þú varst að bullshit hann, sko, þú áttir ekki allan pening.
Nei, en þetta samt vændiskaup. Þetta það. Í skilningi lagana sem
ég ekki að spyrja skilningi lagana.
Það eru dómarnir sem ég fekk.
Ég veit það, en ég að spyrja hvað það finnst þetta sjálfum.
Í dag?
Já.
Fáránlegt.
Ég meina, þetta beyond vændiskaupið, það ekki. Ég ekki að tala í skilningi lagana, ég bara að tala persónutilfinninguna. Þú hefur þrýst á hann unga dreng sem var að safna fyrir íbúð. Þú lofar hann á tölvunni sem hann fekk. En ég meina, þú veist, þú ert mjög mikið að pressa á hann ekki einu sinni samkynhneigður.
Nei, en hann getur sagt nei.
Hann gerði það.
Ok.
En þú hélst áfram.
Ok.
Já.
Þannig reynir við fólk, sko.
And so when you say that Ziggy Tardarson is a sociopath, that is not just a pejorative being thrown around by people who support Assange. That is a court label that was affixed to Ziggy Tardarson, and it also determined the way he was handled in his punishment, because they made a determination about his mental health that then related to the amount of time he would spend in prison and the kind of counseling, other services that would be applied in order to try and deal with somebody who was clearly ill, clearly unstable as a human being. And so this is the person that the FBI has relied on for a section of the indictment against Julian Assange that truly lays out the bulk of the claims that Julian Assange is not a journalist, but is instead a hacker. They've relied on somebody who is a criminal, a sociopath, and a fabricator, a liar, in order to further their case in the British courts. And the Justice Department is apparently still standing by this individual. At least we have no public indications that they are ready to redraw or scratch this charge against Julian Assange and pursue their case without trying to nail Julian Assange for a conspiracy, a computer crime offense that is based on these lies. What does this article mean for the FBI and their arrangement with Ziggy Tardarson? What is it? Does it mean that the FBI has revoked their immunity agreement with him because he continued this crime spree? Does it perhaps mean that the agreement never covered the potential crimes that he would engage in at a later date? Did the FBI have any reaction to Tardarson speaking to the press earlier this year? These are all questions that we continue to have, which have not been answered. But we know, based on this interview that he gave to Stundin, that the testimony he provided is false.
5. mars 2010 sagði Assange Manning að hafa fengið stólin bankagögn frá Source sem var raun og verið þú. Já. Hvaða bankagögn eru það?
Það eru Milestone, það eru Glitni, það eru...
Ok, það eru Milestone-gögnin sem þú tókst. Já. Með minnislíkingum þegar þú tókst úr tölvuna, það ekki var bara ekki opinn tölvan eða?
Ég man það ekki.
Nei.
Og
okay.
Það eru gögn sem að snúa að...
En þetta eru gögnin sem þú tókst, Milestone-gögnin, ekki?
Já, hann er
Já, ok.
En sko...
Er það eitthvað meira sem við erum að tala um? Að því...
Já, að því sko ég og var með lánabók Glitnis.
Ok.
Hún var aldrei birt. Ég var líka með fæl sem var lánabók Landsbankans. Ok. Hún var dulkóðuð og ég ætlaði að fá David House til þess að aðtóa hvort hann getur notað þessa superkompjútur í MIT til að dulkóða. Afkóða. Það er einmitt það sem að var á bara, þetta var allstaðar sú bók, er það ekki? Það voru allir bara að reyna dulkóðan, það var búið að ná í hana, það ekki? Jú. En lánabók Glitnis, hvaðan kemur hún? Ég skal segja það á þér eitthvað. Já, ok. Sagði þú við FBI að ég hafi hakkað það? Já. Nei. Og að Assange hafi beðið að hakka það? Nei. En af hverju stendur það þá í ákærunni? Get ekki svaraði. Er það að þú vilt það ekki eða er það FBI getur ekki svaraði? Ég get ekki svaraði. Af hverju getur ekki svaraði? Af því ég má það ekki.
Of course, everyone will ask, does this have any impact on the appeal? What could this mean for the hearing that is going to take place on October 27 and 28 before the High Court of Justice? Probably it will not factor much into the proceedings. The revelations around the CIA's extreme measures against Julian Assange and WikiLeaks are perhaps far more consequential than the way that this individual, this informant, was brought into this political case. But it still confirms and shows the sheer scope of the corruption that is woven into the fabric of this prosecution. We all deserve answers to the key questions we have about what the FBI is doing now with Ziggy Tardarson, given that he's recanted testimony and he's back in jail and he could be there for some period of time, perhaps could still be in this kind of criminal jeopardy later in 2022 or 2023 when they might try to put Julian Assange on trial, how are they going to even bring this individual into their case when he's such a sociopath? But any reporters who ask about Julian Assange are likely to get this response from the White House.
I would say I would point you to the Department of Justice about espionage charges, and I would point you to the CIA about the other report you asked about. Go ahead.
With respect to press freedom?
I think I spoke to that on Friday. Go ahead.
And you're likely to keep getting response like that because the Biden administration just wants us to ignore the case and pretend like there's nothing extraordinary about prosecuting an Australian journalist with a US espionage law. Thanks for watching. I encourage you to go to thedissenter.org and become a subscriber of this newsletter. You'll stay on top of the latest with WikiLeaks, the prosecution against WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange, whistleblower stories, and other press freedom related cases. Thank you, and see you around.